Let's talk about sex. When most people think about retirement, they picture golf, grandkids, or maybe a cruise. But there's something almost nobody wants to talk about, and that's sex. And here's the truth. Intimacy doesn't stop at 60, 70, or even 80. In fact, for many people, it gets even better. Now, let's be clear. We're not saying that sex in retirement feels like it did in your teenage years or even in your 20s or 30s when you had all the energy in the world and frankly, you could swing from the chandeliers. It's different when you get older, but different doesn't mean less. In many ways, it can be just as fulfilling physically and perhaps even more so emotionally. Welcome to the UnRetired, where you're not done, but you're finally doing what you want. If you're new here, please hit the like and subscribe so you don't miss future videos on living your best life after 60. And today, we're diving into the 10 surprising truths about sex and intimacy in retirement. You might be shocked what you learn. So let's dive into this. The number one thing about sex in your 60s is the myth of slowing down. The stereotype says that once you retire and you get old, intimacy fades away. The desire simply disappears with age. But research tells a totally different story. Surveys from AARP and other studies show that many older adults actually report more intimacy, not less, once the stress of full-time work is gone. That's not true for everybody, but for some people, 100% is. Without the daily grind, people find themselves with more time, less pressure, and more emotional energy to connect with their love. Of course, that doesn't mean everything is effortless. Bodies change and relationships evolve. But the idea that sex simply stops at 60 or even slows down, it's a myth. Sex doesn't fade, it evolves. The second thing about sex in your 60s is the process of rediscovering yourselves. Think about what happens when the kids are grown, the work calendar is cleared, and the alarm clock isn't dictating every morning. Suddenly, there's space. And in that space, many couples actually rediscover each other. I've heard countless stories of couples taking a second honeymoon, whether it's a trip to Italy, an RV adventure, or simply long, slow mornings at home. Without the rush of a career and kids, intimacy can become less about fitting in a quick moment and more about savoring time together. Some couples say they feel like they're dating all over again. And in many ways, they are, because retirement can be a perfect reset button to reignite your passion for life and for each other. The third thing, the new sexual wellness toolkit. Now let's be honest, bodies do change. Menopause, hormone shifts, erectile dysfunction, slower recovery times. These are real, but here's the surprising truth. Today's retirees have far more powerful toolkit than any generation before. From modern medications to hormone therapy, pelvic floor exercises, lubricants, and even counseling, there are countless ways to adapt. The conversation about sexual health is more open than it used to be, making it easier to seek help without shame. One couple I spoke with said that a really small change, like just using lubricant, completely transformed their intimacy. What used to be a source of frustration became totally fun again. And that's a small thing. The takeaway, there are lots of tools that can keep intimacy thriving as you get older. The fourth thing about sex in your senior years is what I'll categorize as solo, open, and redefine. Retirement isn't just about couples. For some, it's a time to explore your sexuality in a solo capacity. It could be about ethical non-monogamy, which is a growing trend, or simply redefining what intimacy means. Some people experiment with new kinds of partnerships. Others find comfort in solo exploration, discovering pleasure and confidence on their own. The key is that intimacy is no longer confined to a single definition. Retirement can be freedom for rediscovery, self-knowledge, and honesty. Intimacy is whatever you define it to be. The fifth thing about sex in your senior years is intimacy beyond intercourse. Here's the truth that most people don't expect. As couples age, intimacy often broadens way beyond intercourse. Instead of focusing on performance or frequency, the focus shifts to connection. And that might mean touch, massage, shared baths, long conversations in bed, or even just holding hands during a walk. For many, these forms of intimacy feel deeper and more rewarding than they did in their younger years. One widow I interviewed said that when she began dating again in her 70s, she was surprised by how fulfilling intimacy could be without any pressure to perform. Her words stuck with me. It was love, not just sex, that made me feel alive again. Pleasure broadens, it doesn't shrink. The sixth area, the confidence comeback. Confidence is the ultimate aphrodisiac, and retirement gives it back to a lot of people. Without work pressures, without trying to impress bosses or colleagues, many people find themselves freer in their own skin. Yes, the body doesn't look the way it did or doesn't move the way it used to when you were 25, 45, or even 55. But acceptance often replaces insecurity, and that acceptance fuels desire. When you stop comparing yourself to impossible ideas, you start to see beauty in yourself and your partner again. For many, that confidence sparks a sexual renaissance. The seventh area about sex in your senior years is date nights after decades. So romance doesn't retire even if you do. In fact, for many couples, this is when it truly becomes alive again. All of a sudden, you've got time for date nights, spontaneous trips, dancing lessons, or even just cooking together can reignite that spark. I know a couple who decided to recreate their very first date, right down to the same restaurant, the same meal, even the same booth. They said it brought back a flood of emotions and reminded them why they fell in love in the first place. Romance isn't just a one-time event. It's actually a skill. And like any skill, it's something you can keep practicing for decades. By the way, if any of this is resonating so far, please drop a comment below and tell me which of these truths surprises you the most. I'd love to hear your perspective. Now, on to number 8, the science of lifelong pleasure. This might be the most surprising truth of all. Sex isn't just fun. Okay, it's a lot of fun, but it's not just fun. It's good for your health. Studies show that staying sexually active improves immunity, reduces stress, helps sleep, and may even contribute to longer life expectancy. In fact, one study out of Wales found that men who had frequent orgasms had a 50% lower risk of early death. For women, regular intimacy is linked to improved mood, better cardiovascular health, and even less severe menopausal symptoms. So let's reframe intimacy. It isn't just pleasure, it's healthcare. And that's a great way to stay healthy. Staying sexually active is actually an investment in your well-being. The ninth truth about sex in your senior years. Breaking the taboo. Here's an irony. Even though older adults are still having sex, it's still kind of a taboo topic. Many people over 60 grew up in an era when talking about intimacy was kind of either considered shameful or just not had at all. That silence lingers and it can get in the way. When couples don't talk about their desires, their frustrations, or even their physical challenges, intimacy suffers. But the moment they open up, whether it's to each other, a therapist, or even a peer group, they often find relief. Silence kills intimacy. Conversation keeps it alive. And finally, let's talk about the 10th truth about sex in your senior years, and that's second chances. Retirement is not only a continuation of old relationships, it's often a season of new beginnings. These days, divorce, widowhood, or simply long-delayed choices can open the door to new love. I've seen people in their 60s, 70s, and even 80s enter new relationships. They get married or rediscover a passion that they thought was gone forever. One man I talked to in his late 70s told me that dating again after his wife passed away was like finding color in a black and white world. Another woman remarried at 82 and laughed that her friends kept asking her what her secret was. Well, her answer was, "I said yes to love again." So remember, it's never too late to love or be loved. So there you have it, 10 surprising truths about sex and retirement. Whether you're partnered, single, or somewhere in between, remember, intimacy does not end at retirement. If anything, it's just getting started. If this video surprised or inspired you, please make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons for more on living your best self in retirement. And let me know in the comments, which of these truths resonated with you the most. Thanks for watching The UnRetired. Until next time, remember, this chapter of life isn't about slowing down. It's about living fully, loving deeply, and never apologizing for joy.